Also, Alex, I actually lived in Germany for a number of years when I was younger.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, my dad was in the military, and then later he left the active duty because we were moving around too much. He worked for a defense contractor and ended up moving just as much, so if not more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where'd you live in Germany? Did you live around?
His base was Würzburg, the first place, and then the second place was Ansbach, which is closer to Nuremberg.
My sister also lived in Germany off and on for a couple of years.
Oh, nice.
She was
because of military?
No, she was a German. She majored in German.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
She's like fluent and everything. She actually works for the State Department now. She lived in Berlin quite a bit, and then she lived in a couple smaller towns, Greifswald.
Greifswald. Yeah, of course.
And Tübingen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of those, I think, is pretty close to the Polish border, if I'm not mistaken. I forget which one.
Tübingen
Yes,
should be pretty close to the
Nice. Fun.
I think she loved Tübingen and did not love Greifswald.
Oh,
if I recall.
Well, we got a lot of German connections here, and we are live. Hello, welcome, everybody. Hey. We have some very special guests here. This is going to be a fun one. I'm very excited. I've been working on the notes on this. It was probably the most detailed notes I've made for a podcast. Just to be honest. But we got some smart people here. We got Alex from Digital Foundry. We have
thank you for having me.
Brad from Nextlander. Willis is controlling the verticals and the horizontals. Unfortunately, Brad and Elena are under the weather, so they're not joining us. But hopefully everyone's gearing up for Thanksgiving. Well, I guess not you, Alex, but we got a number of Thanksgiving-related questions in our Discord about like favorite pie, cranberry sauce.
I can talk about
things
those
like
things.
that. Yeah.
I was just talking to Alex earlier that like I went to Germany last month, and that was around close to even before Halloween time, and they're already celebrating, preparing to celebrate Christmas. So Germany's big on Christmas. Yeah. Right,
Yeah.
Alex, have you bought a lot of stuff yet?
I mean, not yet, but I keep telling everyone around me that I'm going to be getting a tree this year. I didn't get one last year, but this year I'm going to get a tree. I'm going to walk down the street. I'm going to pick it up, pull it on my back, and bring it home.
Nice.
It's going to be about this. It's going to be about yay tall, though. Not very big.
No, it was fun. Christmas is coming. We have, I count. I think we have like 4 episodes of Full Nerd left.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I think there might be one special edition one that we need to do, separate. So maybe 5. But yeah, the end of the year is upon us. I am deep in CES booking. Alex, have you ever been to CES?
No, I've not. Rich
lucky.
has a bunch, though. But we've kind of gone away from physical ever since, Corona.
Yeah. Yeah, well, guess what? You're not missing much. I would say, I love Computex for PCs, especially. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's the one I'm more excited for. I like CES. There's a lot of good stuff that happens at CES, but it's in Vegas, and I've been to Vegas way too many times in my life, and I cannot stand that place anymore, especially when you're trying to do work,
Yep, it happens to the best of us.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, working in Vegas it's another thing.
Yeah, and I'm not rich enough to just be able to go to Vegas and have the real kind of fun,
Oh, yeah.
That kind of fun is bad for you, though.
That's true.
You don't casually put in $20 on a slot machine and just kind of roll with it?
20, that's cheap. You're talking about $100 slots. You just, whatever.
Oh my God,
One pull,
geez.
$100. No, I'm just kidding.
What was Gordon saying about Vegas? If you don't gamble, you win.
Oh yeah. If you,
It's the only way to win.
The only way to win is to not gamble.
It's to not gamble. Yeah.
So. Fun stuff. Also, Brad, I like your tested shirt throwback. I had one of those shirts back in the day.
Thank you. Yes.
I think I outgrew
the blockhead design, I believe.
Yeah, that's fun. We got fun stuff. Anyway, we got all the friends of the show here, and actually, Elena is in the chat. Hello, Elena.
Hey, Elena.
She is joining us. Davina,
Hello.
Boria, CR Pole, Mike Quinton, New Tech, Tony, all the cool kids.
Law. Hello, Jeff B.
Yeah, all the cool kids. Sounds like everything's running smooth.
Smooth 30?
Smooth 30.
No, we're running on smooth 60 right here.
Well, yeah.
Smooth 30. I was about to say, what?
Oh, you never heard that? Yeah.
How did that come about?
So Gordon used to work at Maximum PC, and he had a coworker there that would always say the goal is like a smooth 30. Making fun of console people, PCMR. So I can't remember off the top of my head who who that person was. Maybe Elena knows because she worked there as well. But yeah, so that's our joke is like, if you want console quality, you go smooth 30. But actually, Brad and I we made a video. Hopefully, it'll go up recently. Or soon about the 40. 40 is the new 30.
Oh yeah,
I like
40 is great.
Yeah, the joys of 40.
I think Rich made a video about that a while back when Ratchet and Clank came out, because that was the first time they were Insomniac, right? They put like a 40 FPS mode in one of their console games, and for a lot of people, like they just didn't get it for the longest period of time. Like, what, you can have like 40 FPS games, and it's actually pretty great. I think 40 FPS is a really great middle point. That's how I originally played The Witcher 3 on PC, actually, at 40 FPS.
Nice. I played through all of Spider-Man 2 that way and was just blown away. It's the way on consoles.
I remember correctly, some website and YouTube channel, digital Foundries or something like that.
Maybe
recommended, something about that. I can't remember. Anyway,
Those folks.
Cool. All right, let's. I think we're ready. Everybody good to go?
You good to go? Adam?
You good to go? Yeah. Go ahead. Hit the ad read, and I got the intro ready.
Man. Ad read.
So
there you go. No pressure, right?
No pressure. No pressure.
Never.
All right, here we go. This episode of The Full Nerd is sponsored by Asus. On December 3rd, the company will be hosting PC DIY Day, a celebration of all things PC building and modding. The festivities kick off at 11 a.m. Pacific Time at Asus's headquarters in Fremont, California, with guest appearances by GGF Events, Hibiotech, and even PCWorld's own Adam Patrick Murray. Hey, click on the link in the description to pick up your tickets for this event or tune in into the live stream.
In this episode of The Full Nerd, we talk PC gaming graphical technologies and hardware myths. No mess ups.
There you go.
That was awesome.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 280 of The Full Nerd, PCWorld's premier podcast about PC hardware. I am your fill-in host, Adam Patrick Murray, and today I am joined by some very special guests. First up, you know him. He's been on the show before. Brad Shoemaker from Nextlander fame. Hello, Brad.
Hello.
And we will get to at some point he's running off a new PC, but we'll get to that later. Joining us for the first time is Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry. Hello, Alex.
Yes, thank you for having me on the show. First time here. Hopefully one of many times.
Yeah, one of many times. I hope so. And thank you for tuning in late. I know you're coming to us live from Germany, so
yeah,
a little later for you.
A little bit like 8 p.m. here.
Yeah.
So
if you just want to munch on some dinner, go ahead. We're just chill here. And then
I've got my sparkling water.
Oh,
I was going to say I've got my sparkling water, so I'm good.
Nice. And controlling the verticals and horizontals is Willis Lai. Hello, Willis.
Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome. Speaking of dinner, I might get some schnitzels later.
Ooh, yeah, we should. We actually do have a couple pretty decent German restaurants here in the Bay. Yeah. Nothing like in Germany, but pretty decent.
Is it like Southern Bavarian food, or is it like?
I think
it's like schnitzel.
Good old
schnitzel.
Suppenkuchen is probably the most popular one I know of.
Yes, that one in the city.
That's in the city. Yeah, I've never been to that one. East Bay has a couple ones that I'm thinking of. Anyway, we're not here to talk about German food, but though we can't. I mean, we will talk about food later.
I would just talk about German food.
How many frames per
new
second?
Topic.
Yeah, we'll just add it in there. But no, Alex, since this is your first time on the show, I do want to get a quick history lesson of who is Alex and what you do over at Digital Foundry. For those who might not know, you should know, but just in case you don't.
Oh. That's okay. My name's Alex Battaglia, and I started working at Digital Foundry around, it has to have been 2018, so that would be 5 years ago now. Before then, I didn't actually do anything with technical things in video games at all. I was just purely a hobbyist, like a lot of people here most likely started as too. And I got a really nice DM back then on what was NeoGAF, it had to have been NeoGAF, pre-reset era. From my colleague John Linneman asking like, hey, we're looking for someone to do PC work for us. Would you want to get on? And so I made a little test video, very embarrassing. You can find it on the channel. It was for Arma 3. And got hired up, met with Richard, got a bunch of hardware, beforehand, like I said, just did it hobbyist wise. I actually studied political science and German language and all these other things. So I am not at all what you would consider like a learned expert. I'm just a hobbyist like you. So
I still think you're especially when it comes to this stuff. I'm like, who can I call up who's way smarter than I am? Oh, okay, Alex is one of the first people that I thought of.
That's very kind. But like all the hobbyist stuff, like I just read the papers that developers put out there and watch the conferences, and I'm just really interested in those things, and I've kind of ever been interested in it since probably like I would say around the time of like Halo 1 and Doom 3 coming out. Like those games like totally blew my mind away what you could do like in a game in terms of like visuals, in terms of just anything. And ever since then, and then Crysis came out after that, I've always kind of wanted to know how things tick that do real-time graphics. So as a hobbyist, I just looked it up, and yeah, you can find information all out there on the interwebs.
I love it. And, I will say one of the things I love about Digital Foundry is that obviously your passion for the subject comes through, but everyone on the team has their own passions as well. So it kind of like conglomerates together to be this holistic approach. I do really like that. So what would you call your role in Digital Foundry compared to everybody else?
Well, I would say I'm definitely the PC software person. Like other people look at PC, like Will and Rich 100% look at PC mainly from the hardware review perspective. And for me, it's looking at where the hardware is actually interfacing with the software, and it's in a game itself. And it's then by actually playing the game, which is something that I think DF does differently than other people. Like I'm the PC specialist, but it's not like this is not a slight. It's just saying like what DF does is usually very particular because we play a game through as far as we can on a variety of hardware, and then we try and give out a synopsis about what you should expect when you're going to play that game. And that is something some other outlets do it in a text-based version, like Computerbase does. They're a German website though. PCGH, also another German website, does it occasionally too. But like Guru 3D used to do it back in the day, which is an English-speaking website. But basically, like I try and get you to understand like how will this game run on your PC, and I give out recommended settings, and I also talk about the technology behind the game. And so it's a lot of stuff all together.
I love it. And you also do it in an easy to digest way, especially for the layman like myself. So I dig it. And,
thank you.
And Brad and I were talking earlier too, like there's been plenty of times where I'm like, okay, well, this new game's come out. I'm going to wait for Alex's recommended settings to land on YouTube at some point before I really dig into it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
But
go ahead.
If I may, I also kind of think of you as sort of an advocate for advanced rendering technologies, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
A lot of your explainers about different types of ray tracing techniques and stuff like that I found incredibly instructive, just because we are moving into kind of new paradigms in some ways, and to just see it very clearly illustrated, like here's the old way, here's the new way, here's why it matters. Like I really appreciate that kind of work.
Well, speaking of advanced rendering technologies, let's get to our first topic. And the first question I have here is, how much has NVIDIA paid you to push RT? I'm just kidding. No, that was a joke. Sorry.
Not as much as they should.
Yeah,
I mean, come on, Jensen. I don't have a sick leather jacket. Like, I just got like this kind of one I found on the street. Pretty embarrassing.
Still good looking too. But no, for real. I mean, obviously, ray tracing, path tracing. These are the new things of the future. NVIDIA has done a lot to try to educate and push, and get people to understand why, and you do those really nice breakdowns of like, okay, here's visually how it looks. And for me, like I'm a visual person because my background is in video and photography. So I do appreciate those kind of things. And able to look at it and be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I don't always remember like the name of it, but I'm like, okay, well, when an object is sitting on the floor and it doesn't look like it's connected to the floor, ambient occlusion, I think, is that the right? Yeah, things like that. Being able to look and be like, that doesn't feel right. But then when it does feel right, it's just like, oh wow, this feels really cool. I think the first way I want to kind of kick this off is like, I guess there's the couple parts, but there's always this pushback of people being like, you know what? I don't really see it. I just like traditional rasterization, but then there's people like me, and I would assume you two as well are like, oh wow, this is cool. This is something that, you know, a new frontier, and we're kind of pushing, like, and I would imagine it's kind of hard for developers to be like, okay, well, you know, how do we push both? Do you feel like developers are actually kind of taking this serious, and this is the future of game development, is like real-time ray tracing and path tracing, things like
that? Yeah, I would definitely say that's really, I mean, it's going to depend on your developer. Obviously, in the large AAA space, I would say this is definitely 100% the future right now, and they're going to do a lot to push it, and they have been doing a lot to push it. But if you look at like smaller AA to indie games, obviously the hardcore push for realism is less applicable there. Also, I mean, there's other benefits to things like ray tracing, which are still applicable to the indie AA space, et cetera, too. But it's really in the AAA space. And definitely for there, I think so. There's just very large visual dividends that I try and talk about in my video for very specific things. Like one reason why I think a lot of people are usually like, oh, but graphics always look pretty good. And I'm going to agree with them. I'm going to say, yeah, they do. They like look at a game like The Last of Us Part 2, and there was like, yeah, but your fancy ray tracing game doesn't look like The Last of Us Part 2. And I think one thing that a lot of people tend to forget about games is that they're highly interactive. And the techniques of the past did actually not allow for interactivity in our game worlds to the same extent, because lighting was all very, very, very static. They wouldn't allow you to move the world around. They wouldn't allow you to break it apart. And they wouldn't allow things like the time of day to change, which is all things you expect from real life, and also maybe for some fun simulation. And ray tracing is one of those things that enables that. And I think developers for a long time after the previous console generation were really chomping at the bit to do that, because they'd really, like, those last gen consoles were really slow, and there's only so much they could do with them. So games after a certain amount of time, like you go back to 2010-ish, and then go back, you know, to games that came out right before PS5, in terms of like what they're doing, it's not so, you know, it's not too different. They're not so much more interactive than they were 10 years ago. And I think now with things like ray tracing and better CPUs and consoles, people are starting to see it more come along, and developers really, really want this, because like it's been like 10 years since they've been able to do anything really, really cool for a while now. So yes, developers definitely want things like ray tracing.
Okay, that was my next question, because yeah, I feel like I hear a lot of conflicting things, and obviously the user base is kind of split between I just like rasterization and high frame rates, and then the people who like the bells and whistles, and which obviously is more computationally intensive. But for developers, I feel like I have heard that it does make their life easier, right? I mean, would you say that across the board, or is that just a generalization?
I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but the developers I've talked to that, obviously there's like two parts to this, where like getting it running and performant in the first place is a challenge in its own. So that's a lot of development time and effort right there. Epic's going through it right now with Unreal Engine 5, where they debuted Unreal Engine 5 3 years ago, and the first games that are coming out on consoles, specifically on PC, it's okay. I mean, there's issues there that we can talk about later in the show maybe, but like they're still iterating on Unreal Engine 5, and they showed it off for the first time 3 years ago. It tells you how long these AAA development times are. And then but basically I've heard from other developers that have spent the time to optimize it and get it running well for them. For example, I had a great interaction with 4A Games before they brought out Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, and they gave me a bunch of great behind the scenes information and material to show how much it simplified their life in their game. Like they would manually set up a bunch of lights, and artists tweak it over like hours of time. And then if they change some of the level geometry, they would have to maybe reduce some of those things. It's just like constant iteration. Well, with Ray Trace Global Illumination, which they added in, they just flick on a switch in the editor, which is on by default now, of course, and it just relights the world for them. They don't have to do anything about it. And I think that's the power of it. Obviously, there's a computational cost and an optimization cost of time they have to invest there, but they really want it because it allows for rapid iteration times, which tech of the past just did not have it, like, at all.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty similar excitement from some developers, just that potential to simplify some production pipelines, and on top of the real-time qualities, also just working with one unified lighting model instead of juggling 8 different ways of doing static versus mobile lights and shadowing and reflections and everything. But For the time being, though, you're still going to have to do both, right? Like you still have to obviously have a rasterized renderer at the same time for X number of years. Like that's actually, I kind of came in here wanting to like self-indulgently ask Alex this question. It's kind of a thought experiment I like to run occasionally. How many years away do you think we are from a game shipping with only a ray traced renderer? Like if that ever happens, like a decade, 15 years. I mean, are we ever going to get to the point where like the hardware is, the install base is such that that's the only way of doing things?
So I think if we're talking about hardware ray tracing, it's going to be probably in 1 to 2 years, actually, because there's just a lot of developers that are going to be making games for these current gen consoles, and they'll have only developed something with those in mind. And they're going to say, we already kind of saw that with Alan Wake 2, where they just, out into the blue, there was just like a random post by Leia on Twitter, one of their engineers, saying like, actually, we really only support mesh shading. And there was like a big freak out online, like, oh my God, I bought an RX 5000 series card not too long ago, my GTX 1080. And there was, some wringing of the hands about that. And that's already kind of happened a little bit. So for hardware RT, I do think it's like 1 to 2 years from for the first titles, but like it's going to still be a long time. Like even when DX9 came out, there was like a period, like DX9 is like 2002, I want to say. And then you could still see games that supported like DX8 up until like 2005. So like it was faster back then, but there's still this like time period where people don't need it. But if you're not using hardware RT, technically every single Unreal Engine 5 game that comes out in the like foreseeable future is requiring ray tracing, but it's just going to maybe do it in software depending upon the hardware you have. So I don't know. It's sort of not the best answer to your question, but yes.
Well, because I mean, there are different levels of ray tracing. Like, I've seen like, console people being like, oh, I've got ray tracing in my console, or I'm good. And they're like, it's not quite the same as what you can get on PC, but I mean, technically, yes. So,
actually, yeah. I mean, I think Spider-Man 2 is actually a pretty good example of what Alex is talking about, because if I'm not mistaken, there is no visual mode in Spider-Man 2 that does not utilize at least basic ray trace reflections. So like, you assume it's if and when it comes to PC, that'll probably still be the case there.
That's what I would assume too. And I think that's just like, I remember John did an interview with one of Mike Fitzgerald, who's their technical director. And if I recall in the interview, he said they cut out the path that didn't use RT like 1 year before they shipped the game. Like you were just saying, Brad, like the reason why is because they didn't have to consider like, oh, how many, like, does this scene look good without ray tracing on? And they have to like maybe budge a queue map into a different location, or place more of them and have the artist spend the time doing that, or flick a switch and have the reflections look way better than they ever could have looked before. So yeah, I think as more of those games come along, and especially console ports to PC, which kind of force the issue always, then I think we're going to see more and more of it in the next 1 to 2 years. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the hard part, right? Is that with console generations, it's kind of easy to be like, oh, well, you don't got the new console with the new features, so either you're not going to get the game on your old console, or you're going to get it at some sort of diminished result. For computer hardware, I mean, it's coming out, it's iterating faster, it's kind of moving around, and so yeah, people who are like, well, I've been fine playing on my 1080 Ti for years, but all of a sudden now I have something that is just kind of not usable, regardless if you want to use ray tracing or not. Like there's no clear delineation between, well, you got the old thing. They're like, well, my old thing still works in almost everything else except this. So it's kind of harder to gauge, right?
Yeah, it is, but I also think that's generational. I mean, you all are a little bit older like I am now, and in like the late 90s and in the early 2000s, even in the mid 2000s, like you could get a GPU back then, and like 3 years later, you would be having a really hard time to run some games, or they wouldn't even boot. Like
Alex, the internet does not remember back in the day.
No, it really does not. I mean, like Doom 3 is the classic example, right? It's like you don't have a GPU that does pixel shaders, you're not playing Doom 3, right? Like
yeah, you really are. No, it's like the entire purpose of the game is pixel shaders.
Right.
So like, yeah, it's awesome. I love that stuff. That's the stuff that super excited me back then. I was fine if the first time I played Crysis, one of my favorite games, like first First time I played it was on a card that barely supported it. It was like 15 FPS at 800 by 600 with none of the cool graphics.
15 FPS? Oh my God.
like,
How'd you even play that?
I mean, you just took the sacrifice back then. You just had to live with it.
Yeah, it feels like today people are not willing to take that sacrifice as much. I'm not exactly why, but
it seems like it's just going to take a kind of process of recalibrating expectations coming out of like the PS4, Xbox One generation was just kind of this anomaly of it went way longer than normal.
Oh my gosh!
And there's this 3-year overlap period into the new console where they were still making cross-gen games, right? And PC gamers benefited from that for the moment in the short term, but now that we're finally making that transition, like it's kind of a harsh wake-up call that like, hey, this hardware got you through a lot more years than it would have in the past, but that's over now. That's changing as we transition.
I agreed.
I'm either way. I'm excited about it. Like I think these technologies are super fun to look at. I think it's just a matter of like, okay, well, what kind of hardware do you have? How do you get the right balance of settings too? Obviously that's something that you do on the channel a lot is to look at the settings, show like, oh, okay, you know what, you can bump this down to medium and it's still actually pretty good, but you're getting a big performance impact. A lot of that is just new to people, right? If like, oh, you go in there, in a traditional rasterized game and you bump down the shadow quality, you're probably going to get some good, performance uptick, things like that. But the ray tracing settings, for me at least, sometimes have been like, I don't necessarily know what this does, but
that's a bit of a communication issue, I think. Not for me, but a little bit in the menus themselves. And this is something I always try and talk. At the beginning of the year, I made a video called like the 13 not commandments, but it was originally like it was really supposed to be a really ranty and hatey video, but in the middle of the process I like toned it down a bit, and it's like 13 things to make your PC port better. And one of those things was like informing the user when they get into the menu with pictures, video, and descriptions, and maybe even more about what the settings even do, because if you come, especially in the newer games that you're talking about ray tracing, like you may not even know what the word global illumination means. like I don't know. Like I don't think it's just a word anyone should understand intuitively. So you need to have like a picture or a video, or just have the game menu fade out and you can see the world rendering in the background, and you can see what it does like physically before you when you flip it on and off or change the quality, etc. So those are things that I think I also talk a lot about on the channel, because I think good setting menu they make your life easier on PC. And they can also be a little bit of a fun game in their own right for people who like graphics and they want to figure out how things work. It's like PC's just like this huge sandbox, and giving people access to that sandbox, even in game itself through the menu, is just like another plus. I think it's great.
Kind of a corollary to what you're talking about is that I feel like the GPU makers could be doing more to put out stuff, like interactive stuff that educates people. Like I'm dating myself here again, but going all the way back to when hardware TNL first happened and NVIDIA was putting out like the fairy lights in the forests tech demos. They used to put out new interactive tech demos with like every generation of GPU back then, and you could get in there and tweak sliders and like turn things on and off and see what the new hardware features actually did. And it feels like they've really gotten away from that. Like they did that Marbles demo was it Ampere, I think but I don't think they ever actually put Marbles out for people to play with. Like I'd love for these advanced graphical demos to start being things people could get their hands on again.
I guess the newest iteration, maybe that Matrix demo for that's kind of like the latest thing I can think of. But that wasn't a GPU maker. That was the Unreal, right? Wasn't it?
It was Epic. Yeah, it was Epic, and it was on a console. And like if you wanted to try it on PC, it came like a year later, and you had to like compile Unreal Engine for yourself to do it. It's like not very intuitive at all. I would love that, but I think it's just like marketing's changed so much over the last couple of years. Like the way you used to market like a new GPU was like showing off this awesome NVIDIA ATI made graphics demo. And nowadays it's more like you show it running. For a long time, it was showing that one console port running at 250 FPS on PC or something like that. So maybe they have to get into that rhythm again of making tech exciting. I don't know.
Well, so one of the things to kind of move the conversation along to the next thing, one of the things that I think a lot of the people like NVIDIA, the marketing team does is like, oh, hey, check it out. This GPU can now play at, 4 times the performance with DLSS. So like they're pushing the DLSS aspect of it to kind of be like, yeah, sure, without DLSS it still doesn't run great, but look, you got DLSS, and that's not as exciting to be like, okay, well, you're just but at the same token, I mean, upscaling technologies like DLSS, FSR, XeSS, like things like that, those are exciting in their own way. And I think it depends the implementation, right? Like why, I think each one, each three of the technology, well, I guess, doesn't Unreal have a built-in technology as well? What's the
TSR?
Yeah.
Another acronym.
Yeah. So like, I just feel like each company has like a different philosophy of how they're doing it. Some are, need specialized hardware to do it, like NVIDIA. Some of it is spatial versus not. Like why is upscaling like having such a hard growth period right now?
So I'd say like it's having a discursive hard growth period. Like if you go online, if you read Reddit, if you read comments under a game, I think there's a lot of controversy there. But I think in terms of actual usage results, I think people are turning it on and actually really enjoying it. It's just a very loud, probably minority on the web making a big deal about it, because there are a lot of people out there who don't like it, and that's fine to not like things. And I think, though, in general, it's only people have to be using it because a lot of modern games, if you're used to playing at ultra high frame rates, like during the PS4 and Xbox One generation, you're probably now going to have to turn on DLSS or FSR 2 or something like that. So I think that's basically it. People are probably turning it on in big numbers, but you just don't always read it on the web always, since they're happy and they're playing their game and not talking about it online.
Right. And I mean, there are extreme examples of it, like in the marketing that NVIDIA does, and I understand why that turns people off.
Oh yeah,
but I definitely do think, at least for me, I'm like, okay, well, if I have the option for any of these upscalers, I usually just set it to the highest one, whatever quality setting is, and be like, okay, I'm just going to consider that like a good balance until I watch Alex's video about recommended settings. A good balance to be like, oh, okay, you know what, like, sure, I'm going to lose a little bit of visual clarity, but at the same time, what I get in performance and probably savings on thermals, things like that, is worth it. So anytime it's on it, and Brad Charkis, who worked for us, he does the same kind of thing. He's like, oh, if it's there, might as well turn it on at least, just to have. So like, I
get what you mean. Yeah, I'm just curious, what resolution do you guys game at? All of you, like.
So I'm 1440p at the desk in here, and then 4K on the television.
Mm-hmm. And you?
I do gaming in two places, either on my TV or on a handheld. So like the TV is 4K, and then the handheld, it depends, 1080 or 1080p is roughly.
Is it ROG Ally at 1080p?
That's my go-to right now, but I test all of them. So I just been playing with the Legion Go and obviously the Steam Deck. I play with them all. So
so like one thing that I think that maybe does sometimes skew the internet conversation about this is the resolution people play at. And so like when FSR 1 came out, a lot of the reviews were I was not positive about it in my review, but that was for a very different reason. But like a lot of the reviews were positive about FSR 1 because they showed it off at like 4K in like the ultra quality mode. And that was already like kind of like a privileged place for GPUs. Like not everyone would have had a GPU that'd be playing towards 4K anyway. And so I'm a little bit guilty of myself in my reviews sometimes where I show off the game in 4K. I do show it off in a mid-spec PC always too, usually targeting 1440p, but sometimes like I do leave 1080p users in the dust because it's kind of, I don't know why I do it actually. Probably should cover more 1080p content. But if you do cover things at 1080p, sometimes just like the lower pixel density there, like things can always look uglier at lower resolutions. And that's maybe one thing that inflects a lot of the discourse online about upscaling, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it hits me in the handheld space. I'm a big handheld person, so it's like you can definitely feel it. I only there on my TV, I turn it on because I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, I'll get the savings. On the handheld, that's usually a calculated decision because it's more apparent, the visual degradation versus the performance impact. So that one like is definitely kind of a different scenario. But so I want to get your take on the difference between things like DLSS that needs hardware, specialized hardware to run as good as it does, versus something like FSR, which is hardware agnostic and can run on a lot of things, which is awesome. I mean, even in there's some games, isn't it Breath of the Wild that actually uses FSR, like on the Switch?
That one uses FSR 1. There's one FSR 2 game on the Switch, and it's No Man's Sky.
Yeah,
it is.
So I mean, it's like that is the cool thing. FSR can be anywhere, but obviously, if you have DLSS power, DLSS typically is better than FSR. So how do you balance that weight?
I'd say the industry needs both, just because you need lightweight, highly portable solutions, and you also need someone pushing the boundaries of what the current technology can do. And NVIDIA's DLSS and XeSS from Intel are kind of all about that. So you definitely need both, I would say, to cover all bases. And that's really great that you have access to these things as a developer and as a user. You can run them if you want, if the game supports them. And I like that a lot.
I mean, that is the thing, right? Is that you don't have to run it. Are there any games that well, I guess like a Switch, right? You can't turn off certain games.
Like on a console, you don't have any choice usually. It's like most of the time it's like performance or quality. Switch games rarely have any quality modes, to my knowledge. But I'm, like on, Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5, you got like 2-3 modes, sometimes 4 modes at most, and but most of them are usually always using upscaling. And one thing that I want to say about FSR 2 versus DLSS is that I think that like they're coming at the problem from 2 different ways, and one of them is just, I don't want to say one's more forward-looking, just because AI is just like such a big talking point and it's got a lot of really bad actors in it. But like the interesting thing about DLSS is that since it is machine learning, like its upward trajectory about how much more it can prove over time is actually a lot higher. Like the bound is a little bit higher because there's like always more computing time that can be put into it. Whereas something like FSR2, it's limited by human scales, like how much coding time it have, how much imagination do we have, and that's very different. So that's one of the really cool things about AI when it's applied to visuals is that the scale of how high it can scale is much higher, and it's like much more rapid. So that's the one thing I like about XeSS and DLSS.
Yeah, that's an interesting divide with the AI conversation. Like obviously generative AI is its own other conversation. There's a lot of problems
totally
with different. Like theft of creative work and stuff like that. But like I like to think of DLSS as sort of like a signal processing application of AI, where you're not taking someone else's work and stealing it or building off of it or whatever you want to call it. You're just taking an image that the game already rendered and with better technology making it look that much better, right? So like that to me, like stuff like DLSS is a much more like ethical use of machine learning and AI.
Yes, by far.
Yeah, that's a good AI.
You're using it. You're not like using it to identify like pedestrians on the street or something like that. Right. That's way different. That's DLSS 10. Oh my God.
DLSS 10. Oh God.
Actually, did you see there was who's NVIDIA's chief researcher or one of them? I forget which one.
Brian,
was talking about. Was he the one? He was talking about like he can envision a day when the entire renderer is AI driven.
I mean, at the nth degree goal, that does make a lot of sense. It would probably, the way I always imagined it is like right now, like the rendering of most pixels is still done via like some sort of compute that isn't like the AI. But like in the future, I imagine it could be like fed data on like where the geometry is, but like the actual shading model itself could be driven by AI. And that sounds like, but it's like so far off. But yeah. I thought that was actually awesome when Brian said that.
I'm probably speaking way out of my depth here, but aren't things like Nanite and UE5 like kind of a very broadly a similar thing of abstracting, like taking data structures and abstracting them into something different and kind of working off of that instead of the base? I don't know if that's a fair comparison or not.
The thing is, I think it's not too off base. It isn't the same, but like I think the idea that is about that is interesting is that like Nanite, it's always going to show you as much detail as it can in like the amount of given pixels. And there is a higher structure of information behind it. There's like a super high res model that's fed into the game engine. But the thing that's like procedural about it's based upon how many pixels are on screen. So it is always only showing you how much detail you really arguably need to see. And that's something that AI also could do really well in the future. Like, yeah, like for example, like there could be like a model, and this is actually, there's already research on this, like with nerfs, which are now they're slightly being replaced by another thing. But the whole idea is that like right now they have this issue also in the games like Flight Simulator, where the world is huge. We've got these big maps of data to cover the entire world, but we can't just stream all that data or have it on your hard disk. There's no computer big enough in the world to do that. So they procedurally generate things in front of you in real time that are seeded. AI could actually be used to do that on your local game client for things like, for example, you like look up at a leaf. Maybe there's only like the geometry of the leaf in resident memory, but the AI is like going to imagine the texture, and maybe that there's a bug on the leaf crawling along it. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of things that it could do to expand the experience while still being based on real data. So I don't know. That's stuff about AI that I'm interested in, but it has nothing to do with DLSS right
now. Well, yeah. Coming back to DLSS, one of the other things that's obviously kind of newer and has its own argument around it is things like frame generation. Obviously, it just came to FSR3, and I mean it's very limited. I mean the same thing on the NVIDIA side as well. I've had my own kind of like weird experiences with it where in some cases I'm like this just doesn't feel good, like I to have that latency not match the frame rate is weird. In one place where I actually felt like it was completely fine was Alan Wake, because it is a slower moving game, like as long as the visual quality holds, which sometimes it didn't, but like movement wise, input lag wise, it wasn't that big of a problem. How are they going to get around that whole frame generation? Okay, so now we've upscaled the pixels. Now we're making new pixels, but it has the detriment of the input lag. And of course, they have the technology to try to counteract that, but it's not the same input response. So like how could they get around that? Do you know? I'm just asking you. You figure this out.
I think there's always going to be inherent latency with frame generation. There's no way around it as long as it is doing interpolation, as in holding onto a frame and comparing it with the previous frame and then generating the in-between image. There are other techniques to generate frames. One of them is called extrapolation, where you're kind of like predicting the future frame and parts of it, and that could have some point in the future be something that is advanced in real-time rendering, but I don't think anytime soon. But I think the thing in the meantime, to make it more viable over time, is just to have faster hardware and have much better screens that, because right now we're kind of like limited. I don't want to say limited, it's still stupidly fast, but like 120 FPS, like 120 hertz screens. If you're on a 1440p screen, maybe it's 240 hertz or something like that. The higher you go and more frames you're generating, like I think the subjective aspect becomes more interesting, because if you're only delaying one frame and that base frame's only like 8 milliseconds long, most people, unless you're a pro CS2 player or League of Legends player, are not going to notice the difference between 40 milliseconds of input latency and 48 milliseconds of input latency. So I think it gets more interesting as time goes on. This is just like 2018 when RT launched, like very basic, and it's starting now. That's where we are with frame gen and tech, I think, right now.
Okay, more to come on that. Yeah, the last kind of major topic I want to hit here for the graphical technology part is engines. Obviously, one of the things recently, or not recently, but over the number of years, the number of custom engines out there that the developers using are going down and down, and most of the time it seems like everybody's just moving to Unreal. I mean there are some companies that kind of continue their own trend, like obviously Alan Wake developers. I can't remember the name of the engine off the top of my head, but Northlight. Yeah, thank you. So do you see this as a good thing or a bad thing? Or explain maybe how it could be both.
As someone in the Epic works at Epic in the audience, just like waiting for me to say something, and I actually think it's a very bad thing. Okay. But not like, I say very bad just because we've kind of seen what happens when it's not completely baked and like super awesome. The last like 4 to 5 years of Unreal Engine titles on PC, from my perspective as a technical reviewer, has been just super headache inducing, because instead of talking about like what I love about the game or what I think that developers did graphically that was interesting, I'm spending the time like doing raw Q&A work in my videos about like why it's stuttering and why you can't do anything about it. But that's like the detriment, like when the engine has an issue and it goes into a lot of titles as a result, right? But I think if the engine has a lot of really powerful user creation stuff like Unreal Engine 5 now currently has, and if it gets over its performance problems, then it is actually a very positive thing that a lot of developers don't have to spend a bunch of time doing tech development, because not everyone can do it anymore. It's like so many man hours and working hours, to do that. And I don't think everyone can. And that's why you see a lot of the people dropping their own engines. But I mean, it's kind of like not a great positive thing in the end, because if you're only wholly reliant on like one provider of technology, there can be issues that pop up, and they start popping up everywhere all of a sudden in every game, because everyone has this thing.
Well, not even issues, but also, sometimes it feels like, oh, okay, well, you can just tell visually this just looks like an Unreal game. Like the visual quality is like, oh, okay, it's shades of gray of essentially the same kind of thing, which cannot necessarily be a bad thing, but sometimes you can just pick it.
I mean, Brad, you'll remember this, like in the Xbox 360, PS3 generation, every single time an Unreal Engine 3 game came out, like it was almost like you could spot it from a mile away.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's a little bit better for whatever reason. But even now with some of the early UE5 games coming out, I can always be like, I see you, Unreal, behind that veneer. I see you.
That specific over-the-shoulder angle is always just...
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, I think we should move on to a PC gaming hardware myth, or is there any other technology that you're excited about that you're like, oh, we haven't really talked about it, this is the way forward? Like, what's after path tracing? Alex, what is after path tracing?
I actually was asked this question not too long ago, earlier this year during a DF Direct, and I was so obviously we're talking about like just completely opaque hard surfaces. Those look fine, and they look probably almost fine last generation of games. But things that like move and interact with each other, some of my favorite games have like really cool simulation in them for physics. I think physical interactivity in the world is something games could really improve incredibly from their current place. So that's another thing that's like modeling the materials and how they react to each other, or even break apart, split apart.
Like just purely on the fidelity front, like when you say what's after path tracing, I feel like better path tracing, right? Like
more performant path tracing.
Well, like that, like raycasting algorithms are going to get better, and like Cyberpunk, like moving objects, like when people walk, the shadows of people walking still have the flickery. It takes time to build up samples and stuff. Like there's still a lot of room for improvement there.
Oh yeah, it's sky's the ceiling in terms of like how like Pixar, like it would be great if we could get Pixar quality in real time, and we're just not there yet,
Well, somebody in the chat calls it Path Tracing 2. When is Path Tracing 2 coming out? We need the sequel.
Gotta wait for the white paper on that one.
There you go.
I just set up a poll earlier on what resolution do people in the chat game on, and the results coming in at almost 150 votes. We got 31% now. People gaming at 4K, 48% at 1440p, 19% at 1080, and then 2% at 720.
Oh yeah,
nice.
You're keeping it.
Yeah.
Some people even said 360, 270.
Yeah. Nice. I like
great.
That. All right, let's move over to some PC gaming hardware myths, because I feel like there's a lot of myths that build up over time, and sometimes we need to kind of dispel those rumors. The first one I kind of want to talk about is VRAM. Is that every GPU that releases right now needs at least 16 gigs? Is that true?
No.
No.
No. Just no, because games have settings, and that you should be willing to turn them down if that is with what your budget is about. But I will say developers nowadays, you can't rely on them to always have good settings. It's just the way that these things are. So if you have an 8 gigabyte card and you're going to buy one right now, or a 12 gigabyte card, be aware that some games will not always be perfect the way you'd want them to be. That's about it.
Brad, do you think? What do you think?
Well, actually, I was going to follow up and ask Alex, like, do you think there's a little bit of a psychological problem here? Well, I mean, I think I know there is. Like, I don't even need to ask the question if terms like medium and low, like there's like a pride issue of like, my card's not a low card. You know what I mean? Like, is there some better way to communicate like reduced settings to people where they don't feel like they're compromising or that their hardware was a bad choice or something? You know what I mean?
I paid $400 and I only got 8 gigs and I have to turn down settings.
Or I paid $400 and I can only do medium or something like that. You know, it's like it looks very good these days. You know, but there's still that feeling of inadequacy or something that goes along with that.
Yeah, I think I don't like giving in to the ego about it. It's just because it makes me feel sad. It's just like, oh, we can be more rational about this. That's what I always feel about it. But realistically, renaming something like low to normal or standard, it will go a long way to making people use it. And then like medium becomes high or something like that. Or they can use words that are less tiered and more, I don't know, friendly. I don't know what the word is. Yeah, but I always think back about the times it's been done historically. I talked about it in a video once where Crysis 2 renamed its settings to like, what was it? I forget. Crysis 2 did it in a different way. But Crysis Warhead renamed their settings to like gamer, enthusiast, and something else. Oh, good. Okay. And they did it because they realized that people were putting up Crysis to ultra or very high and not, and it did work, oddly enough. It had like a super crazy psychological effect, but it was also like double-edged sword because like, I don't know, it just kind of like sets wrong expectations. I agree with you, Brad. Like, man, like I think it could be communicated better, but a lot of people just need to realize like the setting name means nothing. It's about what's on screen that matters the most. And then, yeah.
All right. I like that one. Let's move on to developers are using upscaling as a crutch.
Right.
Is that true? Or developers, just being like, what, we can't render this, at playable frame rate. So you know what, we need upscalers to do the rest of the work.
No, they are not using it as a crutch. As Jakob Knopik recently said in an interview with IDM, art director Cyberpunk, that is another optimization technique that they are using to make games look better. And games historically have always done tons of optimizations behind the screen. Like if you look at any one game, especially a console game, most likely the only thing that's like native resolution is maybe the HUD. That's about it. Like almost everything else is somehow sub-native, and it's been that way forever. Even in PC games, it's been that way forever. Like there's no reason to do everything at full res because you don't notice it all the time. Even like when you watch a movie, like or your television, it's maybe set to 422. You don't know that. Like you're all your reds are quarter res, man. Like what are you talking about? Like there's a lot of things about this that are kind of funny, but I don't think so. I don't think it's a crutch. But there's probably been examples of a game that was rushed towards end because the publisher wanted it out really quickly, and they had to push or shove in some way because they couldn't get an optimization passed on in time. That would also not surprise me for some titles, but I'd say it's much more rare.
So
almost seems like, I'm sorry, it almost seems like yet another psychological problem of it's like, hey, they're not using it as a crutch. It's that their visual aspirations outstripped the ability of the hardware to render natively, right? It's like, hey, you're getting a better looking game than you would be if this thing had to render natively. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah, there's this. John talks about this. That's awesome, Brad, that you've mentioned that, because John talks about this all the time too. Is that nowadays native res is such a big deal for most people because our screens are fixed pixel displays. They're no longer CRTs. I've got a CRT right here. I love it. I don't use it for as much modern gaming, but I use it for retro gaming. But one thing that the CRT has an advantage of is you can change the resolution to whatever sub-native it could be, like, and it still looks really great. Like it still looks really good. I like play a game at like 640 by 480 on it, and I think it looks really great. But if I do that on like my 4K OLED, it doesn't look great. And that's because it's like a lot of scaling is going on there and it's blurring the pixels. And this like whole huge obsession with native resolution rendering kind of is a weird byproduct with ego, and also the fact that our screens can't show things sub-native in a good way anymore. It sucks, actually.
Yeah, that's very, very true. It was a weird phenomenon you saw with the backlash to the Alan Wake stuff, because, the specs were, I'm kind of ballparking here, I think it was like, 3070 can do 1080p balanced. Right. I think balanced is the 50% profile, right?
Performance even
or performance, but the effect of that was a bunch of people on Twitter running around screaming like, oh, so my card can only do 540p now, and it's like, since when did people care so much about internal rendering resolution versus what ends up on the screen? Like, it's just a bizarre talking point for people to fixate on when that's not what the end product looks like at all. It's just like another pride or ego thing of like, I need this card to do this natively or it doesn't count for some reason.
100%, man.
Really strange stuff.
I wish it was different. And I like in the Xbox 360 PS3 generation, the resolution of an image had a little bit more of an importance because of just the differences of like how much scaling could occur. Like if a game was native 720p, it was better than one that was like, I don't know, 864p or no, sorry, lower than that, 640p, because like you would have it maybe being native resolution on your set, and that would look better than an upscaled image. But nowadays, like with these image reconstruction techniques, the difference is, at least for the DLSS side of things, it's just like how much like less fine the detail is when something's moving. And I feel like that is so much less like it's not so important anymore. Like the resolution isn't so important anymore as a result.
Yeah. It's also really interesting to see different crowds, different audiences and their level of acceptance. Like PC people hate upscaling, but if you look at the Nintendo crowd that's like rabid for Switch 2 news, like they are so excited.
Like, oh my God, Switch 2 gets DLSS.
Like people are bananas for it. And like I saw, I think it was Rich's piece. Was it today that said that like the DLSS maybe somewhat limited on the Switch 2 because it's lacking the DLA chip or whatever, or hardware.
Yeah.
And I saw people going like, well, that's fine as long as it still has DLSS. It's like, even if they're happy to get anything, because the expectations are so different.
Yeah, man, that's nuts. Yeah, I made one video about, I don't make a lot of console videos, but I made one about like the theoretical possibility of running DLSS on Switch, for potential Switch 2. I made it like 2 years ago now. And like the amount of response to it was insane. It was so high. It was arguably higher than any of my DLSS PC videos, just because it's like cool and interesting PC tech dribbling down into the console space, and it's very interesting. And people are super psyched about it. But on PC, it's like controversial. It's it's so different.
Yeah. Well, the Switch, I think the Switch is the best illustration of why this kind of upscaling is good, right? Because you have such a constrained performance budget that, hey, like you're getting X% better looking games on a very limited platform because you have this. Like that same philosophy should apply to PC, but it doesn't for some reason.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Well, and once again, in a lot of ways, I play a lot on handheld, and so like going back to the whole settings thing too. Like a lot of times, I'm playing either on low or medium kind of settings, and I'm like, oh well, it still actually looks damn good. So
it does.
But once again, your expectations is on you're playing on a handheld. So, I'm like, oh, it's low. Oh, sweet. This can run at 60 at low. Hell yeah. Perception definitely. All right. Next one. Why are you testing FSR on NVIDIA GPUs? FSR looks better on AMD.
No, it doesn't. These are all no's. This is not fair. FSR should, barring some sort of bug, FSR should look the same on every single GPU out there. Just because it is a generic DX12 compute shader, which runs the same on and looks the same on all hardware. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that one was easy. I knew that was easy. Okay. Here's another one. I don't know the best way to phrase it, but this has another part to it. You need the newest hardware in order to get over things like shader compilation. You're getting shader compilation on your 12900K? Psh, that's because I got a better CPU than you. I didn't see that.
Also, no. There are good examples of this. Even before shader compilation stutter, if you go try and play Batman Arkham Knight on PC and you unlock the frame rate, most likely when you drive that Batmobile around the town on like a modern display targeting 120 FPS, you're still going to see it going like stuttering. Mm-hmm. And that's just another game before shader compilation stutter where it has like a programmatic issue that causes this stuttering to occur, and it just doesn't go away. No amount of hardware will fix that. At the best, you have the chance in like 20 years from now when the raw single thread performance of a PC is maybe 4x or 5 or 10x of what we have now, whatever. Maybe then it's reduced enough so that you don't notice it, but it's actually technically still there. It's like actually technically still there, but it's just slightly beyond human perception at some point in time. So no, there's really no good way to get around shader compilation stutter.
Dang it. Okay. Well, I mean, but on the PC, that is usually one of those things where like, hey, you know what? I can brute force past problems that console people are getting because I can put more money at it, but. Sometimes
not for this.
Yeah. If I can jump in and ask Alex a quick question here. Why don't you see more PC games pre-calculating shaders? Is it we don't want to make people sit there for 10 minutes the first time they launch the game and watch a progress bar, or is it actually not feasible from a technical standpoint to fully account for all possibilities there?
Yeah, it's kind of both. For example, when I talked with Nixies about it, who made Spider-Man and Rise of the Tomb Raider ports for PC, etc. They mentioned how they at least for Spider-Man specifically, since a goal for Spider-Man and one of the things that it was advertised heavily for on PlayStation 5 was you just get into the game really quickly. So for them, they don't have a large pre-compilation step in Spider-Man. They're doing it on the fly and doing it a little bit during loads. And it works for them, more or less. But they said they wouldn't want to do a large pre-compilation step because it took away from a little bit from the design of their game, in their opinion. And that makes sense for them. So sometimes it is that way, but other times it has been in games that there's a very specific technical reason for it. But basically, the amount of iterations of shaders can explode ridiculously depending upon how the art pipeline is for a game. And technically, they can maybe try and find them all, but it's a lot of work. And they wouldn't know which ones are always used by the game. They can maybe iterate them all out, but they would maybe only a specific subset are used, like 10% of millions. And so they don't want to do it and maybe make you wait an hour and a half. The Last of Us Part 1, when it launched on PC, along with being embarrassing for a lot of other reasons.
I remember that.
Yeah, you would start the game and you'd wait an hour, and they reduced the time down to I don't know, maybe a quarter of what it was at launch, just because they probably had a more accurate understanding of what shaders needed to be compiled months down the line. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, side tangent, Alex, you recently have upgraded from a 12900K system to a 7800X 3D system. First, I want to ask how it's going so far.
Oh, it's going really well. I turn it on. The one thing that's slightly different about it is it has a different power cycle than the last Intel chip, where it first goes up a little bit and most modern PCs don't always post boot beep anymore, so it's I'm not used to that. But it does a weird power cycle when it starts up, and I think that's something to do with the way the Ryzen boards, these most recent AM5 boards, deal with their memory.
Yeah, memory training.
I believe that's something like that. And so that is a little different, but the rest of it has been really smooth sailing. In fact, I'm having slightly less issues in regards to fitting in my setup. For DF, I have so many PCs and consoles, whatever here, that I use a switcher, an HDMI switcher. And the Intel board, the previous one, for some reason, it's Intel iGPU on the board, just really messed that up. It totally messed that up. It would not ever want to work with HDMI switch. So I'm actually loving it. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I'd love to hear frequent check-ins, just to see. I am curious to see, also so one of the questions I have for you, are you going to be able to look at a game's performance and be able to take out, well, I'm getting this performance because I have that extra cache versus people who have CPUs that don't have that extra cache? Because sometimes, at least for me, I'm okay, well, here's my system I'm running. Some of it is because of the GPU, but some of it is, some games just love that cache. How are you going to be able to kind of extrapolate that out in your recommendations to be okay, well, if you have a CPU that doesn't have this cache, you're going to see performance lower than you're seeing here.
Right. For that, I'll account for that in reviews by not at all basing any of my optimized settings on the experience of the X3D chip. I will almost usually exclusively do my optimized settings based on a pretty old now Ryzen 5 3600, which is it's actually super old for PC terms now. It's
still
like 4 years old. Yeah, it's great. It's great, but it's just it's just interesting. Cause I recently at a Monday morning, we always meet on the Monday morning and we talk via Discord actually about what we're going to do during the week. And I thought should we be upgrading that soon? Because I actually technically upgraded it from the mid-range machine used to be a Core i5-8400, which was for a long time a pretty great last gen CPU. And then the price performance winner was this Ryzen 5 3600. But then we decided actually it's just so interesting of a CPU and it's so popular that you should keep it even a while longer. But the basic idea is I won't have any issue with that basing recommended settings based upon that super rare 3D cache, maybe expensive CPU, because I won't make my optimized settings based on
Okay, cool. Right. That's good to know. Also, side note, Brad also had that same Gigabyte Aorus motherboard that you were sent.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So if you have any,
is he having issues?
Past.
Oh no.
I wish you well. Hopefully, it seems very sporadic. I definitely had some issues. It's hard to say.
What was it?
It was not with the CPU. The CPU, I was on a 7950 X3D, and I had no problems with the split die. The process assignment to the right to the Vcache die in games generally seemed to work properly. It was all I/O problems. It was USB, Bluetooth, networking, dropping out randomly. Occasional problems
disconnecting.
Yeah, storage and networking just sort of falling offline in the middle of Windows, and then throwing 10,000 errors in Event Viewer. It could have been. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's an AM5 or chipset issue. I don't know if it's a Gigabyte specific issue.
Whoa. Okay.
I have no data to back this up. This is just my experience and looking at Reddit and other forums. But I populate everything in this board. All the PCI Express slots are filled. Most of the USB, a lot of the USB is used. 3 of the 4 M.2 sockets were filled. And I kind of got the sense that people who cram more stuff into the board have more issues. So if you're purely gaming, if you're kind of a pure gaming setup with graphics card, one drive, and that's kind of it, hopefully you'll be fine.
That's what I'm hoping too, because you're not the first person I heard that from, Brad. Someone else was saying they were having network dropout and IO dropout.
Yes.
For something. And I don't think if it does have that, and it might as well, for all I know, I wouldn't encounter it because I'm only going to have maybe 2 NVMEs in it and just the graphics card. I'm not going to I know why you have all your PCIe stuff filled out and why you have all that stuff. You're doing stuff other than maybe gaming on it, right? So yeah, I hope I don't get it.
Well, if you do run into any problems, message Brad. He's been through some of them. Anyway, back to the myths. This is kind of the opposite of the newest hardware one. Is that if the developer lists out the minimum spec and I'm above it, then I'm good.
Yeah. This is a minimum spec. So wait, this isn't even a no. This is more like a just don't even pose this question,
because this is hard, right? Yeah, I mean, we've had debates in our Discord of what the hell does min spec even mean anymore? Because developers, they'll put it on the Steam page, right? Oh, hey, as long as you got min spec, you're good, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that you just can't trust min spec anymore. Maybe there was a point in the 90s when it would be printed on a box, and the most important thing you had to really pay attention to was maybe hard disk size and then DX level. That was really about it. The rest of the things were a little bit fluid. And nowadays, since the DX11 era can almost run anything, since games haven't advanced that much in certain aspects, you just don't know. Minimum specs don't mean much of anything. You have to really wait for reviews and user reports to get a really good understanding of what's going to happen when you play a game on your PC.
Then why are these developers posting them? Should they just not post them, or should they update to actually more reflect?
They should probably they probably have a really good understanding internally about what's going on. with the specs, and they should just maybe be more straightforward with it. And it's not a spec sheet, but maybe it's a spec blog post, and it explains a little bit about like what the minimum experience means to them. Like, is that 30 FPS? Is it like flat frame times? Like, these are things that DF does, but like developers have access to this ability. It's just like how much marketing budget do you throw into making a specs blog post? I don't know how many people would want to do that or care if it makes them their game sell better. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you think we get around this, Brad?
Jeez. When you guys say min spec, are you also including quote unquote recommended spec in that? Like, are those both suspect, or are you saying literally just because Steam's got both next to each other? Like,
yeah, I think it should include both,
okay.
Arguably. Yeah.
Okay.
But also like recommended, once again, recommended means recommended what? Recommended on, gaming, what resolution, what frame rate, what settings, what's recommended?
Technically runs playably.
Yeah.
Like,
that's why I think at least min spec to me means you can play the game. Or
loads.
Right, yeah, recommended is like, okay, how you want to play the game, recommended is different, but at least like minimum. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have it seems like even developers have a hard time solving this problem, so I certainly can't offer anything. Like I saw I think it was Thomas from Remedy after Alan Wake came out, and people were playing it and saying, oh, this runs way better than those minimum specs you put out suggested it would. And he was like, yes, we were very conservative on those. We really targeted the lowest end of what we thought we should say for that stuff. So maybe under promise, over deliver is the way to go. I don't know.
Well, but that bit Remedy though, because everyone was screaming crap, I need a 3070.
It's tough. And I mean, that's just inherent to the PC. It's always been inherent to the PC and the infinite variations and combinations of hardware you can have, right? It's just a drawback of the platform that it's not a fixed target. So
yeah. I always feel like, do you guys remember when Windows Vista came out, they had the index experience score?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always feel like that could have evolved into something much more useful for game developers because it did things like test RAM speed, tested single-threaded CPU performance back then. And I think nowadays, with the amount of data collection and AI, that they could probably give you an index user experience score for your chips, like the components in your PC, and they could give you a much better understanding about how your game would run based upon things that developers could maybe also input into that system too. I feel like there's a way to solve it programmatically, especially with like big data crunching, but it's just like someone has to do it first. And I don't think anyone's done it yet.
Well, is there a way maybe in Steam so that this actually falls on Valve? Because Steam knows the hardware if you opt in, it knows the hardware you're using. It can maybe gather some sort of information about how it's running in there, and Steam itself can like in real time update,
That'd be cool. They also have the ability to do it if you would opt into it.
Yeah.
I mean, a
lot of people do opt in, so.
Yeah. I mean, I would also like that too. It'd be great to know if I like click on a Steam store page, like what settings I can expect for a game. That'd be really fun.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is maybe the kind of thing that DirectX should take a stab at, or like that should be a new component of DirectX maybe, because that would give it the broadest application to everybody playing games on Windows at that point. Like Microsoft's been a pretty good steward of game technology in Windows.
Yeah, right. Man, it probably is a DirectX solvable thing. You're probably right there. Like I sometimes always, when I get in conversations with like people that work NVIDIA or AMD or Intel, I always actually ask them questions, and I realize I should almost be asking Microsoft some of these questions because it's like, actually, this is a Windows issue. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing, and sorry to bring this back to handhelds again. The other thing that I've had too is that there's been plenty of times where it says, "Oh, this is recommended for or verified for the Steam Deck." Got that green check, but it still runs like crap. And I'm like, "You call this verified? I would not call this verified." So like.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit of Valve wonkiness there. I feel like because. Valve's curating of the Steam storefront is it's Valve. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Last myth, and we'll hit some general Q&A. Console ports on PC are always going to be crap.
Oh, always.
For whatever reason.
For whatever reason, there's really good ones. I always say the Coalition makes incredible PC ports. If you don't know who they are, they made the Gears of War games, the most recent ones. Nixie's steps up to the bat, and they do an amazing job these days. And there's others. There's some other smaller studios that do some really great stuff. I think it's just a matter of budget and priority. Some game devs just can't. They just don't get the budget and time to do it, unfortunately. I would never blame the developers themselves. This is pretty much always a publisher, like funding and time and expertise issue, very rarely.
I mean, right, that a lot of times when I see something come out and it's not the way, or it's not performing up to snuff or something like that, I don't always go straight to the developers. They probably had that same problems too. Like, I'm thinking of like publisher, like high ups in the business are like, I don't care, just push it out now, and they're like, no, we can't. Always safe to blame the guy in a suit. Yeah. So
yeah, right.
I'll take that. That avenue.
Yeah, it's why, like, I mean, if you guys are on Twitter, right? Like, you always hear like the quote unquote lazy devs rhetoric come around. And I feel like I wish it would be so great to like get into the general consuming audience that like it's the developers, they play the game, they see it pretty much almost everything we see, and maybe even more. They know all the bugs, they spend all the time troubleshooting them, or maybe not. It's a matter of just like someone else is making the decision about when this game has to ship, and maybe the devs aren't even happy with the game as it's being let out, but they kind of have to do it.
Instead of lazy devs, it's money-hungry suits.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Blame the money-hungry suits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
God. Okay. Let's. I mean, there are plenty of other myths, but those are the fun ones. Thank you. That was fun.
Of course. Yeah, gladly.
Let's go over to some general Q&A. If you have any questions live in the chat right now, get them in the chat and at PCWorld. That's kind of the easiest way for us to see it. If you're watching or listening later, there's a link in the Discord to. Link in the description to our Discord. We have a channel over there for full nerd questions. I actually did start a whole separate new channel just for questions for Alex specifically, so it didn't get too muddied in there. So here's a good one from a friend of the show, Cause MC. Should we consider the Steam Deck low 30 FPS as min spec for all games?
I think almost Valve wants it to be that way, and I think that's why they're sticking with the hardware as long as they possibly can, along with the fact that they really want to push battery life. I would really love if Steam Deck became a I wouldn't expect it for all games, because we even have stuff like Alan Wake 2 right now. Games like Returnal don't run well on Steam Deck. You could probably talk about a couple also, Adam, like from your experience, games that don't run on Steam Deck very well, like more modern ones. But I would love it if it became like a minimum spec PC that people could at least get 720p 30 on, or maybe not 720p, but like upscaled 30. That'd be cool. Yeah. I'd like that.
We had a number of questions of people asking you, what's your favorite GPU ever?
Oh.
Or just what it did for the industry. You're like, oh crap, this is the first one that was able to do this.
Oh, wow. I mean, in terms of just like opening the door, I think pixel shading on the GeForce 3, it wasn't very powerful GPU necessarily, and it has issues, but like just pixel shading in general, just so huge. Like everything after pixel shading just doesn't look the same anymore. There's just look at like a Dreamcast game versus, like you were saying earlier, Brad, like Doom 3, like really, it's like insane. But for me, like personally, one that I've owned and the one that I just loved was the 8800 GT. It's NVIDIA 8800 GT, DirectX 10. For me, DirectX 10 was magical. It's just like, I thought it was so cool. It's kind of a bummer in the end. It didn't pan out so awesome, but it was just like, it was the dream, the DirectX 10 dream. It was great.
Brad, what was your favorite GPU of all time, do you think?
My first NVIDIA card was a Riva TNT, and I was very excited to only have one graphics card in my computer and not have to have not have to have a 2D card and a 3D card at the same time, and also have the analog pass-through make the 2D output look like garbage, which makes me very old.
Oh my God.
Makes me very old. Also, the GeForce 256 was another big one. Like, I mean, granted, there was a massive marketing push behind the transforming lighting moving onto the GPU. Like I don't know if people remember, that's where they coined the term a GPU. They were not, they were like 3D accelerators before that. And NVIDIA was like, okay, now we have made the world's first GPU. Like, we're doing compute on this thing now. And like, you know, and like they put out tech demos to match. And that, you know, that was the Quake 3 era. Like there was just, things were iterating so rapidly at that time. Like
That's awesome.
Leaps from generation to generation were so profound. Like it was just such an exciting time for 3D graphics.
In that Max Payne video that I recently did, it was just John and I playing on the PS2 and PC, but I did turn off hardware TNL on that, and the difference in performance was ridiculous. Like people talk about ray tracing ruining performance now, but my God, if you turn off hardware TNL, the game is like 1/10 the performance. Like it's nuts. Yeah,
that's awesome. Dr. Ian Cutchers, Tech Potato fame, is in the chat. He says my favorite GPU is my CPU. Running CPU rendering Crisis. I can't remember exactly what CPU he did that on, but yeah, that was fun.
That is awesome.
So question in the chat that came in just now, Joel Embedded, something like that. What does Alex hope to see in DLSS 4.0?
I haven't thought about this one yet. I guess come back to that one in a second. I'll ruminate on that for a while.
Is there anything you'd like to see, Brad?
Oh gosh, something I definitely haven't thought of yet.
All right. So here's a very technical one from someone over in our Discord, friend of the show, Lord Slinky Supreme. On Linux, Valve always precompiled Vulkan shaders based on your hardware to be downloaded should you choose. This effectively lets Proton solve all the shader compilation issues ahead of runtime, and frankly, the difference is notable in games. Should Microsoft make something similar available for Direct 3D12 on Windows?
I actually think this is an opportunity. I think that Linux model that is done, it's okay. I think it's generally okay and it works for them, but I think the issue actually needs to be solved differently. I think we need to move beyond the way pipeline state objects are currently done into some different system so that we are not worrying about this anymore. Either it's going to be solved in hardware itself at some point in the future, where there's like the way, like there doesn't need to be as many large combination of shaders done for each hardware, or it needs to go to a different model entirely. Vulkan is now offering a separate model that doesn't use PSOs right now. They just recently unveiled it like last year at the beginning of the year. And it's kind of like a hardcore response to the issue because developers didn't like it. Players didn't like what was going on. And what Valve offers there is great. But I don't think it's possible even under DX, given the way DX is like, it's going to depend on your DX version. It's going to depend on your driver version. It's going to depend on all these different things. It's going to depend on your hardware. Excuse me. So I think it's actually about moving away from the PSO model in the future in whatever future version of DirectX 12 it is. And I was pretty excited about the Apple GPU they just showed off in the M3 because it offers a way to do to kind of cut out this problem already in hardware, or at least reduce the complexity of it in hardware. It's just a matter of getting that over into the PC space over amount of time. And I don't think this is a problem that's going to be solved anytime soon. It's going to take like probably 3 years or more. Yeah.
Okay. This is kind of a reframe of the DLSS 4.0 one from friend of the show, Borea Zero. What obviously both DLSS and FSR have improved significantly over time. What are DLSS shortcomings at the moment that you'd like to see improved in future iterations?
That's great.
Kind of a different way to posit it.
I did think about it a little bit, and like when things are disoccluded in a game, so like when you have like a ball right in front of the screen and it moves rapidly and it reveals pixels behind it, usually at a further depth. DLSS handles it more elegantly than FSR2 does, but there is still a disconnect there in quality of what you're seeing on the screen. And I would like to see that improved. And I don't know how they would do it. And one thing I would also like to see improved, and this applies a little bit to ray reconstruction, DLSS ray reconstruction, is that you guys have seen AI models generate stuff before. Like there can be a slight stylization to pixels that occurs sometimes with DLSS and DLSS ray reconstruction. It happens when things are disoccluded usually, but with ray reconstruction, it can even happen when things are like in full light, nothing's going on. I really want to see AI models get away from that, whatever it is. Like there's like a slight stylization that occurs, and I want it to go away. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. Let me go back over here. This is an interesting one from a friend of the show, Star Screamus. What do you think about downsampling 8K on a 4K monitor using AMD's VSR or NVIDIA's DSR? Essentially saying, would running 8K on a 4K monitor be better than using regular anti-aliasing?
Wow.
If you just so happen to have the performance, he's got a problem. This is a real tough problem. We got to solve this.
Yeah, I would say
really affects a lot of people.
Yeah, I would definitely unless it's like you're playing a really old game. Sure, go ahead and do it. But I think you're better off doing a trick that I mentioned I made a video about DLDS. I always forget these dang acronyms. DLDSR? DLDSR?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Where you can, if the game supports it, what you could do is run the game at, let's just say, 8K performance mode DLSS, which is internally 4K. But then you get the added benefit of DLSS doing some things at the post resolution of 8K. So maybe it does post processing at 8K. And also, it's accumulating to a much higher spatial resolution. So maybe you'll get better at crisper edges, crisper detail, etc. I think that's much better usage of the power because 8K is so expensive. My goodness.
NVIDIA said it's here. Did you not see that? I think it was the 3090. 8K's here.
It was 3090. I made a video about 8K and I said it's BS.
I mean, obviously it's not. People are ready to play 8K.
Every cheap HDMI cable you buy on Amazon these days says 8K on it.
Doesn't the PS5 say 8K on the box too?
It says 8K on the box. Yeah. It still doesn't support 8K, even as an output resolution. It's so nuts.
The PS3 said 1080p from day one also. And then they actually...
Brad, I don't know. Have you ever seen Brad, did you ever watch John, my colleague John Linneman's video? It's like the 1080p dream. It's like all the PS. It's a very long video, and some of the titles are absurd, but it's something like 1 or 2% of the entire PS3 output is actually 1080p.
Not only can you not deliver the resolution you're promising, you also didn't put a scaler in to even fake that resolution.
PS3, man, hardware.
All right, a couple more questions here, and then we'll get out. Ivan Remanazov asks a good hardware-related question. What should Intel do to earn consumers' love for the next GPU? Is it a 5070 killer for half the price, or do they need a Halo product like a 5090?
I think they should go for the what is now mid. I don't know. What is the 4070 to you? What is the 3070 to you anymore? I don't even know if I consider these things mid-range anymore. The GPU market is so messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's starting to push upper mid-range, yeah. You're talking about $800, $700, Yeah.
I think it would be awesome if they had a GPU that was like that 4070, 5070, or maybe even like the 1060 equivalent card, where it's so good for the price and it's right in that middle spec gamer territory. And that is how you break into a market really, really well. This time around with Arc, they had I think Arc's really cool in a lot of ways. It's just the drivers were letting it down, but there's also some hardware issues there, most likely. And I think they tried to push down the price so heavily on Arc to make a splash in the market. And I don't actually know any of the statistics here, so I can't quote anything. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if they push even higher in that direction for the next gen, they could really win, because NVIDIA and AMD, I don't know, I think they're equivalent to the 4060 now and the 7600 on AMD are not such great GPUs. I think they could be better for the price.
Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Excuse me, the bang for the buck play is always how you win the hearts and minds, especially when you're coming from behind. Like, saying, hey, we have the fastest GPU is fine for the 0.5% of people who would be able to afford it. But yeah, like absolutely hitting like good mid-range NVIDIA level performance, but undercutting them on price dramatically. And yes, like you got to shore up the drivers. Like the experience out of the box needs to be very good on every level. But like they absolutely could carve out a reputation as being like the thing to get on a budget and still do really well with.
Well, funny enough, you should both answer that way, because Ivan follows up and says AMD for the longest time has been the performance for price king, yet they have still not gained a ton of share against NVIDIA. Why do you think Intel doing it would be better?
Wow,
that's a good question.
Well, so mindshare is a part of it, but I want to say like there's been a split in the market like a little bit ever since ray tracing came out. I would say the GPU market was much more dynamic and volatile pre RTX cards coming out, because they kind of did this thing where like that we hadn't seen before, where they didn't focus on price performance so much. So in fact, they were like dead even almost a little bit at the time of the release, but they said, here's this thing that's going to enable future games to look different, work differently, etc. And they sold it on that, and that they changed the market completely, totally messed everything up, for better or for worse for a lot of people. But I think if Intel, since they already did that with their first release of GPUs, they went in all in on machine learning, they went in on RT harder than AMD did. I think they have like the basis there, like in terms of hardware, where they could actually make a dent in NVIDIA's package, because like they have stuff like XeSS, which looks great. It looks super great. I've tested it. It's awesome. And they have great RT performance. So like I think they almost right now are better set up to do it than AMD, just because they have the hardware stuff already kind of figured out in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I would even add QuickSync to that.
Thank you. QuickSync's cool. Yeah.
Granted, like fairly limited use case. Like if you stream, it matters a lot. Like NVINC is kind of the best thing out there, but QuickSync is also quite good. And like the NVIDIA feature list is huge. Like you said, it's like they have the best ray tracing, the best upscaling. They have like broadcast and NVINC, all these other like side features. CUDA, like, yeah, there's like so much you could do on NVIDIA cards that is not just play games these days. And you're probably totally right that Intel is the best position to try to match that offering.
It's like a value add, right? That's,
definitely, very much.
But AMD would probably like to point out that they have a lot of these same value adds as well.
True.
So
True.
Yeah, especially now, it's gotten better over time. Yeah. Like I said, like when RTX came out, it was like a real weird gulf. And then like over time now with FSR, they brought out their new encoders that do AV1.
Yeah, I think those have gotten better too. Yeah.
Well, and then the third follow up on that is there even a space for a third player?
I hope so.
Gosh.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I mean, always. I personally, I always feel like it's better to have more options and more competition than less. I don't know.
I'm 100% same as you there, Brad. Though I'm looking at the console space, and there's this weird thing going on where I don't know. What do you feel like? Is there a third player in the console space? Like, because like you've got like Sony and Nintendo, two different markets, but they're like absolutely dominating them respectively.
Yeah.
So it's like there is a third player there with Microsoft, but it's like it's almost a little bit AMD's position where it's like always behind now for like a decade.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know.
I got nothing there.
Well, we asked the good questions here. We stumped the guests. There we go. Yeah, yes. I like it. Let me grab one more question before we get to a couple fun ones.
Okay.
Crap, where did I put it? Oh no, I lost it. Okay, never mind. I guess I'm not gonna. Yeah, there we go. Trying to keep notes. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, okay. We got this is an American holiday coming up. We have Thanksgiving coming up in a couple days. They're ready to eat. Nom 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 nom. Alex, you're not celebrating. I get it, but you still like food, right? So
I love food.
Yeah, okay. We got a couple food related questions here because of the holiday. Friend of the show, Starscreamus asks, for Thanksgiving, do you prefer 1, jellied cranberry sauce,
We got. You summoned Elena.
Oh,
into the chat.
Elena's coming. Oh, wow. She really wants to talk food. Okay, I was about to say. I was like, oh no, who's coming in this in this chat?
Elena.
Yeah.
Hi.
Elena's going to connect for a second. Oh, there she is. Hi, Elena. Welcome.
You summoned Elena for a food chat.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you, Elena, by the way.
Nice to meet you, Alex.
For Thanksgiving, do you prefer 1, jellied cranberry sauce, 2, whole berry cranberry sauce, or 3, no thank you?
By jellied, I assume we're talking about the
We're talking about the can.
Like straight out.
Yeah,
straight out
like
the
just,
can.
onto the plate. Yeah. We'll start with
Nice
Elena,
bully.
because I guess Elena came here to talk food. Are you a cranberry sauce person?
You made it sound so appealing with the just like. So I'm going to say no to that. Honestly, I didn't grow up with any of the cranberry stuff. Honestly, it's always funny to me when people ask me about traditional Thanksgiving food that my family likes to eat, and I always say, well, I guess the turkey is the closest that would count, because I don't think a lot of non-Chinese American families are bringing fried rice and other traditional Cantonese dishes to their potlucks.
That's how
So
you
I
do
guess
it.
for me, it's a no thank you. But I will put a little asterisk on that and say, if someone were to serve me fresh, I will try it.
Okay, Brad, do you have an answer?
Not the biggest like fruit and meat person personally, so
Yeah.
I usually skip the cranberry sauce, but it has its adherents, and I wish them well.
Yeah, Alex.
I mean, I think I'd go for the fresh. Not the tube.
I will say so for me, Willis, do you have a preference?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I will say, growing up, I had a friend who was all about the cranberry sauce, but it was a placeholder. He would just get a 99-cent can of cranberry sauce and just essentially have it there to be like, all right, well, we have the cranberry sauce. No one ate it. I did try it a couple times, and I was like, but it was just like a symbolic thing. You have to have it. But recently, my wife Lindsay made homemade cranberry sauce, and I was like, oh, wow. Okay, that was actually really damn good. Like, it completely changed my opinion of the whole cranberry sauce thing. So, yeah.
Wow.
Good.
All right, another one from Cause MC, friend of the show. Cause MC asked, turkeys, fried, oven roasted, or smoked? I don't think I've ever.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Elena.
Fried, like deep fried?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Like that's the only really way
However
to
you
do it
want.
if you're going to go for fried.
Yeah.
I have tried deep fried. It's pretty good because it does, I think, retain a lot more of the moisture, and turkey can get so dry. But honestly, I'm not really that picky. Because as long as it's not dry, I'll eat it. And really, I'm only there for the fact that once you're done with making the turkey, you take the bones and you make a stock, and then you make what's the English word for it? A congee, like a rice porridge with that after.
Nice.
So like that's like a tradition in my family. I think a lot of other Chinese American families do that too. But that to me is always what it feels like is the holiday tradition.
All right.
Sounds good.
Alex, what would you prefer?
Yeah, the moisture part about cooking any sort of bird is actually like the big deal. So yeah, I'd probably go with whatever retains the most. That was a really good answer. Like, but I've never had a fried turkey. That sounds insane.
Yeah,
how do you fry it? It's so big.
So there are deep fryers that you can buy. I've never done it personally. I've just partaken of it and not questioned it too much. But basically, I think you just have like this deep fryer. They'll do it outdoors, obviously, because of all the like the splatter. And you're just like, I guess you're just like dunking the turkey in. It's just like a big version of going to the state fair. Instead of what is it, Twinkies, it's a turkey.
I would say YouTube it and find out. It's a lot of.
I mean, like I love American state fairs where it's just like you can just bring whatever you want, and imagine somebody just bringing a whole turkey. Here you go. They're like, okay, if that's what you want. Brad, your pick.
I have to go fried. I have had the fried turkey.
You have? Oh man, I haven't had it. Crap.
Probably the worst for you, but the best preparation.
Okay.
Crap. All right. Willis.
I like fried. I like smoke. I wouldn't cook fry. I wouldn't try to prep fried myself because it's really dangerous. I mean, if you prep it, like good enough, like keep the turkey dry, and then you throw it in the fryer, then you're fine. But I'm usually skeptical about it. I'm, like, just play it safe.
Mm.
All right. So another one from Cause MC: sweet potato versus pumpkin. In any form, I guess. I don't know. Maybe. Any thoughts on either?
I love pumpkin.
Yeah.
I'll never say no to pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
I've bought the Costco one, and about halfway through, I was like, "This is both a terrible and wonderful mistake." I think it's freaking huge. But I mean, sweet potato pie is pretty good too. So again, I'm not gonna be too picky about it.
My Midwestern family almost gave my ex-wife a heart attack. She was vegan, and we went over to celebrate one time, and they were making sweet potato. They're, oh, hey, can you help us make sweet potatoes? Baked sweet potatoes or whatever. She, oh yeah. And so you get the sweet potatoes, but they used canned sweet potatoes. So, whatever. Yeah, right.
No.
Okay, whatever. You're not starting out great, but it's fine. And then one of my family members gave her like 2 sticks of full things of butter and was like flopped in there, and then just like a huge cup of sugar, and then the marshmallows on top, and it was just like she was just like, oh my god,
that's a lot.
Wait, was she upset because of the sugar content, or because she's vegan and there's butter, or just all of the above?
All the above. I mean, yeah. Like it was mostly just like, well, how the hell do you eat that? What the hell?
Your mouth.
Yeah. This is how I grew up. So yeah,
That's cool.
I enjoyed it, but I have a soft spot for sweet potatoes. I think they can be used in plenty of ways, sweet and savory, to a certain degree. So yeah, but pumpkin pie. I mean, destroy pumpkin pie. Well, speaking of pie, Star Screamus asks, favorite pie. Elena, what's your favorite pie? Go.
No, I can't answer this one right away because there's like a full running thread in Discord on this.
Oh yeah, there's 144 messages.
They know
I did
my
not
thoughts
read
already. We've gone into some strange territory. I would just say there is a picture of a piece of cheesecake with baked beans dumped on top right now in that thread. Don't ask me why. We just somehow ended up there. But I think
did
they'll
not read
probably
that
hear from
thread.
you all
Okay.
first.
Well, crap. Okay, Alex, your favorite pie.
Pumpkin pie is really good actually. But I kind of want to say peach pie. Peach pie.
Interesting.
It's not often seen, but peaches are delicious.
It's not like a cobbler. That's different than a peach cobbler, too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just cooked peaches in general, when they can stir in their own sugars for a long time. It's very good.
All right, Brad. Favorite
All
pie.
of them.
What? All of them?
All of
Almond?
them.
All of
I thought you said almond, and I was like, almond
pie.
Okay.
All of them are so good.
I can't think of a pie I would not eat, honestly. I mean,
Really?
Absolutely.
What about that thing Elena just said?
Well, like there's probably brown sugar in the baked beans.
That's the right answer.
Next time Brad comes in, we'll do that. We'll bring a pie, baked beans, and just.
Okay.
Can we just do a pie smorgasbord? Or
We should.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm from the South where pies are taken very seriously, so I've eaten a lot of pies in my life. Have you ever heard of a chocolate chess pie? That's probably my actual answer.
Chocolate chess.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's so decadent that it all just kind of like blends together in the mind. It's chocolate based. You might
fudge filling. Wow,
it's probably the least healthy pie on the planet. But.
Dang. Okay, magical chocolate chess pie. I like it. I'll have to try that.
Brad, I have a question for you then. If it's all pie, does that include pizza?
Oh boy,
pizza pie.
No, this was actually part of the thread.
Sure.
So if you want to see the shenanigans that were happening,
Sure.
Wow.
Or how about have you ever had
pizza pie?
I mean, you guys work on 2nd Street. Did you ever have the meat pie at Henry's Hunan?
No. I just went there for the first time recently. I did not have the meat pie.
Next time you go to Henry's, get the
Okay, thank you.
The meat pie.
Okay, right, there's lunch.
Yeah. We'll have to do that.
It's also a good pie.
Yeah, like savory pies are also delicious.
Oh yeah.
You can also make a savory pumpkin pie as well too.
Huh.
Like because like pumpkins can be used for almost anything. Like sweet potatoes, like you were saying earlier, Adam.
Oh, okay. I like that.
What about you, Adam?
I mean, I'm with Brad. All the above. There's only one pie that if you put that in front of me, I will shove it back at your face because I do not like it, and that's key lime pie. I
no.
cannot do key lime pie.
Darn it.
Oh, no.
Shove, not even like.
I will not
Is
even
that the
politely disagree.
is that the one with the meringue on top?
It can. I think not
yes,
always.
not always, but yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like
Key lime pie is the only
meringue,
one.
so.
Yeah.
Well, Adam just shattered my heart because that's my favorite pie.
That's
right
your
there.
pie?
That's my pie.
Oh, man.
I like.
You know what?
I
You
like
can have
sour-
mine. You can
Yes,
have mine.
It works out.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
more for you.
Yeah, exactly. Adam and I can just switch. Yeah, I like acidity. I like sourness. So yeah, that's my go-to pie. Key lime. Remember.
Yeah, sour. There's nothing sour for me. Well, especially even cherry. If the cherries have sour, yeah, like a cherry pie, like it can't be. Yeah. Anyway.
Wait, is this because of the allergy, or is because you don't like it?
Both, I guess.
Oh,
yeah.
fair.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever gotten allergic to a key lime pie. I don't think there's enough in there. But I also just don't like the taste. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, was there any other food questions? Nope, it doesn't look like it. So let's get out of here because we are running on some good time. Let me bring up my notes to get us out of here. Actually, Elena, did you? Real quick, Elena, any PC deals on Black Friday that you want to come and inform us
man.
about? She's our deals master, deals ninja.
I haven't honestly had a chance to really wrap my brain around everything right now, but I think now is a really good time for upgrading a CPU in particular, or upgrading like CPU motherboard combo. Intel is doing a lot of I have never really seen this before, but Intel's doing a lot of discounts on 12th gen right now. I've seen a couple of deals already on 13th gen. AMD's been responding a little bit, but not as much. I'm wondering if they're kind of holding their fire. We'll see.
They have had good bundles through the whole year, though, at least at Micro Center.
Yeah, they have. And honestly, as usual, if you live near a Micro Center, you're going to get all the best bundle deals through there anyway. So that's where my eye is right now. I think I'll still be able to maybe cobble something together for the annual, like what's like the cheapest decent gaming PC you can build during Black Friday with deals, but we'll see. I might end up eating more turkey this year.
There you go. Any other deals anybody seen floating around for Black Friday?
All I need to say is that for upgrading, I always feel like if you're stuck on AM4, that you should just look to getting a 5800 X3D if you could find one. If you're stuck on AM4 and you just want to be there forever, get that 5800.
For real, that thing is like a legendary. That's like an all-time CPU at this point.
Yeah. And RAM got super cheap for DDR4 right now. Like I'm seeing like 32 gigs for like $50. And I'm like,
what?
I can have I'm like, I can have all the tabs open now.
How many tabs you want?
Why not?
Nice. All right.
Has anyone ever camped out at a was it Fry's Electronics or Micro Center for Black Friday deals back in the days?
I don't think I've camped out for like a Black Friday, like a doorbuster kind of deal.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I probably did once, but I wasn't like going for I wasn't elbowing people.
I've never camped. I'm not that hardcore, but I have stood in line outside Circuit City when that was still a thing.
Circuit City. The commercialization comes down and plug. Anyway, all right. Check back next week for your fix of PC talk on the Full Nerd. To listen to us on the go, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Pocket Casts, or anywhere you can point your RSS feed to. If you are on one of those services, please leave us a review. Every time you do, Willis gets a key lime pie. I get a pumpkin pie. Elena, what was your pie again?
Also pumpkin. You have to share with me.
Oh yeah. Brad, the chess something.
Chocolate chess or meat pie or both,
pie, whatever.
Or any pie.
Yeah, Alex will get a peach pie.
Pizza
Give
pie.
Give us the pies by leaving us reviews, please. I appreciate it. I want to thank Elena E for popping in for a hot second. Thank you, Elena. Hello.
That was nice.
Surprise food.
I want to thank Brad Shoemaker for being a frequent guest on the Full Nerd every once in a while. I'm like, hey, do you want to come be on the show? And you're like, yeah. So
always. Thank you. Yeah, thanks as always for having me.
And go over to nextlander.com to go watch and listen to Nextlander stuff and give them money. Why not? Especially
you said it.
Why not?
It's one of the best
disagree.
Black Friday deals is giving
That's
Nextlander
right. It's
Patreon your money.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Yeah, exactly. What a deal. Speaking of deals, the Digital Foundry folks that Alex works for also is a great deal if you want to contribute to the Patreon. You have a Patreon, right?
Yeah, we do. And also we do deals as well too, but mainly UK. Less and EU, so a little bit less US, but we're trying to get into US.
Okay. All right. And yes. Anyway, thank you, Alex, for being on the show. Digital Foundry YouTube channel is like the main place, but there is written articles on Eurogamer, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere else you want to point people to? I want to make sure that
follow me on Twitter. Follow Digital Foundry on Twitter. I'm highly interactive on Twitter to my own mental health detriment.
Nice. And thank you everybody for watching, and thank you, Wills, for controlling the verticals and horizontals. Take us out of here.
All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I am very thankful for everybody here, everybody in the chat, everybody on the show today. There's no, for those who celebrate Thanksgiving, or those who don't, there's no wrong time to feel thankful. And there's also no wrong time to eat a turkey or a pie. So grab a turkey, grab a pie this week, and we will catch you on the next show. Bye.
Turkey pie. Chocolate chess pie.
I have to Google that after this.
It's very bad for you.